mine working. I feel just like Paul Hollywood. But slimmer. Oh, sorry. I only get carrots, not cakes. Mary. It's a reminds me of when I was saying, blowing my ear on fully anyway. It is a phenomenon. It's doing better than Coronation Street, it's doing better than EastEnders, 14.5 million at the peak of the viewing of the final. You can't imagine when we started doing it on BBC Two that it was going to be quite such a phenomenon, can you?
You can't really, and hearing that music makes you feel, it's quite moving. And you hear that music and think, oh, it's all come back again.
It's a bit like Chariots of Fire coming down.
No, it isn't. It started from, we've no idea what we were up to. 3 challenges, not too sure what we're doing. And then it's sort of built over the years. It's our 6th series. And I just think it's got people enjoying being together. Now we don't have Sunday lunch, or many people don't have Sunday lunch. The whole family, the grands and aunts, the family, the children, Dad might even miss football to watch the bake-off. And then, with any luck, somebody says, usually a younger person says, I'd like to make those buns tomorrow, Dad or Mum, and they go and do it. And it costs very little. If you go to a theme park, it costs a fortune. You can do baking in pouring rain, doesn't cost much, and it's immensely rewarding.
And this programme has proved that, and it's built year on year. It started on BBC Two, as I said, now on BBC One with this enormous audience. And what I like about it is the fact that other cookery programmes, cookery rather than baking, there's never been a challenge harder than this one, except what we had last week, But you don't do that on Bake Off. It's there for us all to see what's happening, and the tension is built by the contestants, in a way, getting it wrong. And we have to talk, I think, about Nadia and those amazing expressions that we saw. We were on the edge of our seat when she's going, and saying, I'd rather have another baby than do this, You're clearly terrifying, you and Paul. That's what it is.
Oh, no. Alan, I certainly am not terrifying. I want people to enjoy baking. I want our bakers to, if they've turned something out and it goes flop everywhere, I don't want to tick them off. I want to say, next time, if you'd just cooked it another 10 minutes, but, it does taste good. And they get lifted up. But if it was on any other sort of programme, they'd get really ticked off, they'd burst into tears, they'd storm out. We want to encourage them. I think, is Paul a bit tougher than me? No, I think he is too. But he's a great expert in his subject, bread.
He's a baker, yeah.
He's a baker.
When you're doing it, we develop our own favourites, I think, don't we, as viewers? You find yourself siding with somebody, and then you think, oh, no, actually, they're better. We had Flora from Scotland, that lovely young girl, and what she could bake at that age astonished me. And then, you think, oh, Nadia's doing so well. Ian with his amazing lumps of tin that he crafted as an engineer at home and brought them in. When you're doing it, I know you're not allowed favouritism, and I wouldn't ask you for a favourite yet, but do you find yourself warming to somebody and then warming to somebody else?
When I first started the Bake Off, I can remember thinking, so-and-so's going to do well, and I've learnt not to do that, because usually they don't. Because we do judge on the particular programme. So they can make a cock-up of something, even though they're excellent bakers. We don't go back. And, I thought in the final, we had 3 finalists that were absolutely brilliant. They were neck and neck, and there's no doubt they were. And any of them could have faltered, and some of them did. And Nadia, she had a very good day. And she is a perfect example of the person that should win, because she is a natural baker. She's a mum with 3 children, encouraged by her husband, and it's her absolute relaxation, and she loves sharing what she does. And, I was thrilled that she won, but if the other 2 had won, I would have been very happy too.
Some of her things were absolutely spectacular. The peacock with the tail was quite breathtaking. When you come back into the tent, you must be blown away sometimes. And the lion's head that was made out of bread that Paul said he'd never seen anything like. I mean, that was astonishing too.
The lion's head was quite amazing. And sometimes we come into the marquee and it falls down. And it's awful when it does, or it collapses. More so when we're doing Celebrity Bake Off, and we're just doing Sport Relief now. And you'll all remember Dame Edna Everidge, who couldn't bake anything. I mean, but a great sport, giving their time for charity. But we do get great surprises, but people put their heart and soul, and they practice like mad, which is, I think it's wonderful. They stay up half the night, because the first challenge, they can practice, and the showstopper, but the actual technical, lift the cloth, and that's it. They don't know what it is. So it is very tough for them.
Let's go back to the beginning with you. What fueled your passion for baking, for cooking, for food? When did it start?
I think it started at school, because I was lucky enough to have domestic science at school. And the brainy people did Latin and maths, and the others did cooking. And so quite naturally, I went to cooking. And we had a new department at school, and I had a wonderful teacher called Miss Date, who was knee-high to a grasshopper, and she had a passion for sharing her knowledge. I think of myself all the time as a teacher. And she was one of the best teachers. With your own children and grandchildren, it isn't the blonde glamour girl that teaches you. It's the one that puts the extra bit in and treats everybody as an individual. And
the one that says, yes, you can, when you don't
exactly,
think you can.
Yes, you can. And so Miss Date, I have to thank. And I did keep up with Miss Date right until she was in her old people's home in Monkton Combe in Bath. And I went to see her, and she was just as jolly and happy, and keeping all the other people in the home happy and amused, and baking buns for them.
What I think is so nice, and I think most people think it's lovely, is that I remember buying for my wife, because I worked for Hamlin, the all-colour cookbook. When we got married in 1975, it was the first cookbook we had, which I think was your first one, back in 1970, yeah?
Yes.
And the lovely thing about it was quite novel for the time, because it gave you the recipe and it showed you a picture of the finished dish, which was quite rare back then. And since then, it's over 70 cookery books. And the reason I think is that it's so nice what's happened now with this phenomenon is that, my goodness me, you've been at it for a long time. Well, if I say plodding, that implies not getting anywhere. Just doing your thing. And it must be rather lovely for you, I think, now, to think, this is really rather nice.
I think the nicest thing is when you're in a supermarket, and of course it would naturally be your supermarket Waitrose.
Thank you.
Somebody comes up and taps you on the shoulder and says, I do your lemon drizzle cake. Or, even here today, somebody came up and said, I've made your fish pie for supper. It's very rewarding.
I'm always curious, about how recipes come into being. Because, you know, there's a steak and kidney pie and there's a fish pie and so on. So how do you develop a recipe which is Mary Berry's fish pie? Do you start with a basic set of ingredients and then fiddle around? How does it happen?
Well, if you take fish pie, it's my mother's fish pie. Whenever we went down for Christmas, because we always spent Christmas with my parents, the children would chant in the car, and Gaga, she was called Gaga, she wasn't, but they used to say, well, when we get there, it'll be Gaga's fish pie. And I mean, I've always done smoked haddock, unsmoked haddock, lots of hard-boiled egg, the addition, because my husband likes hard-boiled egg, and I try and fit in a few things like a bit of chopped dill, and my husband says, why don't you do it properly? And so, you know, you go on adding things or taking them away, and also bringing in, I mean, you as a gardener know that over the years our vegetables have changed. I mean, 20 years ago, who had butternut squash or fennel in their garden or in the shop? So I try and incorporate those in recipes and teach people how to cook them and enjoy them.
And you're a gardener too. I mean, you do grow your own.
A bit of one, yes.
Very good, actually. Far too modest. Everybody's come to know you as a double act with Paul Hollywood, as well as having your own career, which is well established. But there are two Pauls in your life.
There certainly are. My Paul, I've been married to for 49 years. And, yes, marriages are made, aren't they? And
I love the way they clap you for managing to cling on, really.
Yes. And so I'm very lucky to have had a husband who's let me do what I want to do. And so, you know, when I say I'm coming to the Isle of Wight, it's my second visit. Quite recently, I came down here filming, and I did my tomatoes, your wonderful tomatoes, and marvellous fishing, and went back with elephant garlic. And so I know a bit about the island, and I'm allowed to do what I want to do for my programmes and things. I'm very lucky.
Was it difficult early on when you were bringing up a family? That must have been, it's the usual juggling thing. When you want to keep, when a woman wants to keep any career going and also feel that she's not shortchanging her family, was that a tricky sort of juggling exercise?
It was very difficult when I was bringing up children, because when you had children when I was having them in the sort of 60s, you were automatically, I was working for a magazine, and you're automatically, they think, she'll give up, because there was none of this, have a year off and you can have your job kept for you, and there was none of that. So I did work through my children, and I had 5 weeks off with each child, and they were fed on bottles because I wanted to work. And I don't regret it, and we had very good sort of mother's help to look after them. And I was determined to continue what I loved, and I had the backing of my husband, so that was it. But he's not domesticated in any possible way.
Well, he doesn't need to be, does he, really? You know.
No, it would be nice. I remember we were all sitting at the table, and people were saying things like, oh, it must be lovely to be married to Mary, there always a meal, and this, that, and the other. And somehow or other he got on to saying that she's not very good at washing socks. And he went upstairs and he found all his odd socks and tipped them onto the dinner table.
Have you cooked for him since?
I've cooked for him since, yes. And it was almost about that summer, somebody said to him, I'm sure you'll know, which kind of washing machine has Mary got? And I thought I could hear it at the other end of the table. And my husband says, I put my washing in the linen basket.
What do your children, now grown up, of course, what do they make of this latest sort of...
I'm very lucky. My children are immensely supportive. They love all the sort of things to come with me. Well, not so much our son, but Annabelle, I don't take my husband if it's BAFTAs and things, because he would loathe to go and be amongst all the soap opera people and so on. He would just hate that. And Annabelle, or my daughter-in-law, comes, tarted up to the nines, and love looking and seeing who's in EastEnders winning this and that. So I'm very lucky. It's a treat for them. And I'm just off to the final of Strictly with my daughter, I think. Daughter-in-law.
Yeah.
Which is a long way off. December.
Yes, it is. Yes, with a lot of people to knock out before then.
And I'm not doing Strictly either.
Whatever?
Never, ever, ever. And my children and husband said, "You wouldn't, Mum, would you?" And I said, "No."
Do you know, it's funny, my wife and daughters have said exactly the same to me.
What's wrong with us?
With my knees. Anyway. Your life hasn't all been plain sailing. You went through what most parents would regard as the most difficult thing of all, and that is losing a child. You lost William, aged 19.
Yes, William died. He was at Bristol Uni, and he came home, and it was a Friday night he came home, and I remember that it was very special because he didn't come home that much. And we had supper in the dining room, which, you know, we always eat in the kitchen, don't we? And I'd done roast lamb. And I remember Will coming in and he said, "Who's coming? Why are we having a roast on Friday?" And I said, "Well, it's you." So, you know, I'd given him a lovely meal. We had all the family there. But the next day he went out in the car to get the Times business supplement, and he took his sister. It was in January, and it was a lovely sunny day. And sadly, he was killed in driving his own car, and he was a very good driver. But the joy was that his sister was in the car, and she was saved.
How do you get over it? Most people couldn't imagine doing it.
It isn't over, it's living with. I mean, we were very lucky to have him, and he was a smashing chap, and he was what every parent would want. And, you know, I always feel frightfully sorry for people who lose. I know that we had a builder at the time whose son had gone on a trek to Africa, and they didn't know where they never found him. And, you know, I had my Will, or our William, at home. I knew everything about him. I knew how the accident happened. He was joyfully going a little bit too fast round a corner, nobody else involved. If he'd hurt somebody else, or Annabelle he'd killed Annabelle. You know, it is the most awful thing, but we were immensely lucky to have him. And we all, as a family, still think of him. And my grandchildren, who've never met him, you know, they talk about him, and so does Annabelle and her husband as well, who vaguely knew William, but he is still part of our thoughts. And I think really everybody has a different way of thinking of these things, but we were lucky to have him.
You do your bit now as a patron of child bereavement, so...
We do our bit.
We do our bit, we both do, yeah.
Yes, child bereavement looks after the families that have had lost a member of the family, because often it's the children that need supporting, or the husbands. I was lucky. I mean, I had a wonderful family to support, but many people are very questioned why the tragedies happened, and they're so upset, and they never come to terms with it, and the child bereavement charity helps them with that.
You now have grandchildren. Are you as exhausted as I am?
We have lots of I have 5 grandchildren, and I'm doing a new program. I've just done Absolute Favourites, and for next year we're calling Foolproof. And I've just been last couple of weeks at my daughter Annabelle's with all the children cooking, and that is the most traumatic time you can have. It was very sweet. I was cooking with a 4-year-old, making flatbreads. And I had the mixture in the bowl, and I put my hand in like this. And obviously her mummy, my daughter, always uses a wooden spoon. And she handed me a little spoon. Granny, you need this. As much as say, don't put your hands in it. And then, of course, there's wonderful pictures of the naughtiest one, Louis, beating it. You know, we say knead it. Well, he's absolutely doing this. And little Hobie running around. I love cooking with my children on television because it makes people think I will do it with my children or grandchildren. Mm. And, you know, if you do simple things that they want to eat, you're away.
One thing that strikes me about you, Mary, is because of the things that have happened to you in life, you're tough, and I don't mean impenetrable, I mean you're resilient. And contracting polio at 13 must have taught you an awful lot or coloured the way you approach the rest of your life, because you were out of action and in bed for how long?
About 6 months. I was immensely lucky with polio because I only had it in my left side. And of course, it was I was there with an epidemic, and I was very lucky, and I got better. I saw people around me in iron lungs and having an awful time and dying. And so, again, that makes you feel you're immensely lucky. And, you see my funny little hand on television. I look at it and think I don't have to darn socks. But I'm married to a man that thinks socks should be darned.
And washed, yes.
Yes, I wash them, but I don't darn them.
For you now, what are the moments that you regard as your happiest moments when you think this is so wonderful? What's your best times?
Without doubt, the best time is with families. I mean, I'm very lucky to have had the odd award, and that is, I'm very chuffed about that. But the happiest times are most definitely with the family. And because I've been very fortunate, and, it means we can have great family holidays all together. And that is a bonus.
The CBE was a tremendous award, and a lot of people would have said not before time. It came in 2012, I think, which is quite some way on in your career. But was it still a surprise to you?
It was a huge surprise. I had to look it up what it was. I didn't know what was MBE, OBE. My father had an OBE, and then I saw CBE. I had to look it up and believe it, and it was a huge honour. I was chuffed to bits.
Did you get any indications as to whether Her Majesty watches Bake Off?
I was invited to the palace for lunch with the Queen, just 12 of us, and I quickly was advised she didn't. But the Duke was very interested in barbecuing, and he told me all sorts of things about his barbecuing, how he used the game from Sandringham, and he obviously is very interested in food.
I went up there, I was making a film about him for his 90th birthday.
A garden as well.
And a garden, yes. Well, a couple of stories, actually. One, I wrote a book called Royal Gardeners, and I sent it to the Queen because I felt I ought to. And I had a long letter back from the Duke of Edinburgh telling me everything that he'd done that I'd left out. So that was one thing. But no, it was nice to know. And I said, well, when it's revised, sir, I'll put in the additional information. And then I did this book, which is out there called The Queen's Houses, and I managed to get some of it in there as well. But I couldn't really acknowledge him. It would seem like a bit, naughty. But I did make a film about him for his 90th, and I went to Sandringham and looked at the barbecue trailer he'd designed, and the film cameras were rolling, and I found myself going up to the man that he worked with to make these trailers, and I said, would you mind showing me the Duke of Edinburgh's equipment? And I said, oh, no, I think I'd better rephrase that. So, but he is a great barbecuer, yeah,
I was surprised at that, and he really knew. He said, I stuff them with haggis, but I add a little bit of breadcrumbs to the haggis because it's a bit greasy. Then you know that he does it.
He really does watch it. Because the thing, I remember years ago, to mention another cook, I remember Delia Smith saying to me, will you teach me how to garden? And I said to her, well, if you'll teach me how to cook, because it seems to me that cooking, baking in particular, is actually chemistry as much as anything. It's knowing how different things work or react to heat and how they react with one another when they're together. And it's actually, from that point of view, quite technical. Or to you, is it completely instinctive?
Absolutely not really. I mean, obviously, certain things I can do standing on my head, so to speak, but it's a very, very simple science. And if you follow a good recipe and you have scales, now digital scales, brilliant. You can't cheat with digital scales, even in the bathroom, unfortunately. And if you weigh accurately and you follow a good recipe and watch it in the oven, most people can make delicious things. And as I say, it is so rewarding.
Mm. Picking up on that point about bathroom scales, and watching you and Paul tucking in on, and yes, we see you take a very tiny little mouthful, and we know that when the camera's moved on, you're in. How on earth, Mary, do you stay so svelte? Because, you're baking, you're cooking, and you clearly enjoy food, or you wouldn't do it.
Oh, absolutely, love food. But we do have to taste everything, and I taste not a large amount, but I have a little bit of each, the middle, the top, and the whatever. And if I didn't, somebody's aunt, uncle, friend would say, well, how does she know? She didn't taste it. And so I do taste everything, but I'm very careful that I don't have second helpings or that second slice of cake. When you open the tin at home and it's on a slant, well, before you offer it to anybody, you straighten it up. And then it comes to it and you give somebody a piece of cake. And when they've gone, again, it's not straight, so you straighten it up. And there are a few crumbs at the bottom, and, well, no, why not? You have to get that. I try not to. I know exactly what puts on weight. And I have masses of vegetables and try not to be too greedy, but I do love food.
You also like what I would call proper ingredients. You often tell us to use butter, use full cream, don't use, low-fat this and this kind of spread. Why are you so keen on, proper butter
I think
cream?
It's terribly important to support our farmers, because if we don't support our farmers and eat a balanced diet, if everybody thinks they're going vegetarian, for example, we will lose our cattle, the hedges will go, and it'll all be arable. We were made to have and survive on a little bit of everything. And I see no excuse whatsoever to have substitutes or low fat. I mean, I don't want a quiche made with cottage cheese, and then whoever's offering it to you says you can have a big slice because it's very low in calories. Well, quite frankly, I'd like it high in calories and have a small slice. And it would be delicious. I want the real thing.
When you are invited out to lunch or dinner, is it a terrifying prospect for your host or hostess? Mary's coming, oh God,
With my own friends, definitely not, because they know that I go out, as I'm sure many of you do. The company is the most important thing, the people that are around you. And if I don't mind what I have, really. The simpler, the better. And good friends, often, we've got somebody called Juliet in the village, and she has a pudding that she makes from Nice biscuits, which has a terribly rich chocolate mixture and lines them up in a tin so it's set. She turns it out and has it with cream. She's not a cook, but it's delicious, and she always say, oh, I never know what to give you, Mary. I said, just do what you did last time. It was delicious. And she said, oh, I couldn't do it again. I said, yes, you can, and we love it, because that's one thing she can do. If you've got a favourite, do it again. If they've been foolish enough to say it was delicious, it's their fault. Do it again.
Are you constantly, because the books keep coming out, are you constantly developing new recipes?
Yes, we have a team at home. Lucy has been with me, who I've just done the new Arga book with. She's been with me 26 years. Lucinda's been with me 13 years. So we're a team. Each time I do a series, I have somebody new in who I've looked around for and had recommended to have a little bit of new life, somebody young who is very experienced. So everything you see in a book or on a program, we have tested until I'm totally satisfied. That might be 5 times, it might be once. But all the things in Absolute Favourites, and again in our new book, which we've just finished, nearly finished the new one for next year, we try them out. And they've got to be good, and they've got to work for you.
What's in your kitchen? What could you not live without? You're an Arga woman, I know that much.
Yeah, the Arga, I love an Arga because I'm the coldest mortal in the world, and I lean up against it an awful lot, and so do the dogs. And by the way, it cooks quite nicely. What could I not do? I'm unlike Paul Hollywood. If I can do something by machine, I'll do it by machine. I like a mixer, a processor, sharp knives, and very fresh ingredients. And my store cupboard has not as much in as you would think, because I go on using the same spices, the same curry powder, cumin, coriander, 5-spice, very few spices, because I don't want too much. I mean, why do I need dark soy sauce and light soy sauce? I only use dark. Just eliminate some. You don't need them. And if you've got a daughter like mine, she'll come along, pick it out and says, past its sell-by date.
Never been used.
Don't worry, I go to her cupboard now.
Do you like wine?
A lot.
Favourites?
I drink a lot of white wine after 6.
Yeah. Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot
Sauvignon Blanc. But the main thing is I like it dry and terribly cold. I mean, my husband, when I get home tonight, I will telephone him just before I get home, and the glass will have that chilled, frosted look on the outside, and it'll be at the back door as I walk in.
Ooh. Cocktails?
No, we were actually filming last week at Rules for my new series, and all the girls, I had 3 girlfriends with me because we were comparing my beef Wellington with the one Rules do, because being a very famous London restaurant. And at the end they said, oh, do have some cocktails. And my girlfriends were as high, all 3 of them, on these cocktails. And I was so thrilled to see that Downton Abbey went to Rules, didn't they, in the last programme. I was in good company.
Now, we've got to talk wardrobe, because you seem to be the queen of Zara now. I mean, was it a conscious decision when you went on? I mean, as far as I'm aware, all the time I've known you, you've always been what they used to call well turned out.
Tidy.
Did you expect that your wardrobe would get quite so much notice and comment?
When I joined Bake Off, Mel and Sue always wore jeans, and that's something I didn't really wear very much except for gardening or dog walking. And so I thought, right, I'll buy myself a good pair of jeans. So I wore jeans. And then it's terribly cold in that tent. So my aim is to wear as many jumpers underneath a jacket as possible. And so I started always wearing a jacket. And my husband always says, don't wear wishy-washy colours. So I always wore bright things. And then the Zara jacket, a bomber jacket, I went to the one near Peter Jones in a great hurry, and there was a bomber jacket, and I thought, that looks big. I can get a lot underneath it, so I bought it. And so I didn't even think about it. I wore it, and the others sort of said, oh, you look different today. And everybody wanted it, and it sold out in no time. They always want to know where I get my jackets from, and it's just really something that is bright and colourful and often flowery, which if I'm going to anything RHS, which we both do, I'll always have a flowery jacket there.
It's between you and the Duchess of Cambridge, isn't it? Who's the fashion icon of the day, really.
Well, she is so tall. Unbelievable, because I was doing a child bereavement charity thing, and William and his wife were there, and they gave me a photograph afterwards, and I showed it to my husband, and he said, were they on a platform? And I said, no, because I look about down there, and aren't they tall?
They are both tall, yeah.
And you don't realise how really, really tall. She must be nearly 6 foot with very high heels.
Towers over you. Now then, we are told, Mary, that you are going to America. Now, you will come back, won't you?
It isn't announced, and and I'm not allowed to say a word. And,
well, I read it in the paper.
You read it in the paper, and actually, I am not going. They come to me, okay?
Ah.
Right.
So is it not Bake Off?
In here, it is, was, or whatever, going to be, has been done here. And they've all come here, okay? I'm not
Good.
going.
Just have an image of you in the Hollywood Hills, living in one of these houses with a pool.
I like to be with my husband, and it's all sorted. Don't worry, it's not going to affect any of you anyway.
Any ambitions left? I mean, I'm not going to ask you if you're going to retire, because I know you won't, and I wouldn't want
Definitely
you to.
not, and neither are you. So
No, okay,
we
fine.
just take it a little bit less.
I think
That's
so.
how we keep everybody happy.
Pace
isn't it?
ourselves a bit more than we have done.
Yes.
But is there anything you're burning to do now?
There's not anything really burning that I want to do, no. I love what I do. Bake Off to me is my family. I like doing my own cooking program, because then I can do proper cooking, and people don't think of me as only cakes. And I would like to have days in the week when I can nip off to see my grandchildren in all their matches and things. I'm just like a normal granny, really, and if my husband's there too, that's a bonus.
Lovely. Well, thank you, Normal Granny. I think it's time I opened up the questioning to the audience now. We've got about 20 minutes for you to ask Mary whatever you want. I think are there floating mics, or am I doing hands up? Somebody tell me? Anybody? Have they all gone? Stick your hand up, shout it out, and I'll repeat it. Lady there, yes. Is Bake Off done very far in advance of it appearing on our screen?
This series was done in Newbury at Welford Park, and we finished on the last day of June.
How do you keep it secret?
How do we keep it secret? We do. And no newspaper would dare print it, because they'd get shot, wouldn't they? And just you remember that all their families have been there on the final day, all the children, and they're just honour it. But it's the same with all things like MasterChef or Strictly. You just have to keep it secret.
Mary.
And I forget anyway.
Have you ever been tempted to go down to Ladbrokes?
No.
Next question. In the middle there. Right. No, take statins. So, Mary, if you're advised by your doctor, you have to have low-fat this and low-fat that because of high cholesterol, what do you do?
Follow your doctor's advice, definitely. Absolutely. I was just and also I'm always being asked to do special diets. On Bake Off we do a free from. In my books I try and do some vegetarian and cakes without gluten and so on. Just follow the advice of the experts if you have a problem, definitely.
Next one, lady on the front row.
Mary, I've just got a lovely new American daughter-in-law. She's bought me some lovely cooking books because she knows how I like cooking. And I know you're going to do the American one. But here it's grams and ounces. In America it's cups. How do you weigh a cup of butter?
Grams and ounces, American books. Oh.
If you look online, you will find conversion charts because they usually do it as a stick of butter, sometimes a cup of butter. But if you look on a conversion chart, it'll give you the exact amount. Many of the writers in America now are using grams, which is far more accurate, because if you do a cup of flour and you just pour it in like that, it gives you a different quantity than when you bang it down. So look at a chart online or in most big cookery books.
Or go and see your doctor when you've had the cup of butter. Next, lady over there. Where do you go on holiday, Mary?
Where would I like to go on holiday?
I'm repeating all these in case people can't hear over there. So
yeah.
Where
would I like to go on holiday? From my choice, I like somewhere warm. My husband would prefer not to go somewhere warm, so it is usually a compromise. My favourite holiday is with all the children, all the other halves, all in one place for 2 weeks, in somewhere where there's a lot of space to get away from them at times.
Anybody over here? Yes.
Do you have an absolute favourite dish that you like?
Absolute favourite dish. Desert. This is a good one, isn't it? You're allowed one dish on your desert island, Mary, or in this warm place with your family.
Right.
Which
Actually,
one?
I did desert island discs, and I think I'm really simple. I love toast and marmalade a lot, homemade marmalade with sourdough toast, perhaps, or potted shrimps. I'm really very simple. I don't need a fancy dish on my desert island. The one thing I took with me, they asked me what I wanted on, Kirsty asked me what I wanted, and I took a cashmere blanket, because I'm always cold.
I took a pair of wellies.
Oh no, I was paddling in the warm sea.
Can't bear wet feet. Anyone else? Lady there in pink, yes. Why didn't the Star Bakers wear the sheriff's badge this year?
I've no idea. Why did they wear the sheriff's badge? I think somebody made them and they put them on. And I think we haven't had, they don't normally wear the badge. I think it was on one of the charity ones, but our own Star Bakers don't wear Star Baker's badge. The Star Baker is the best of each week, and they all love to have it.
They get very emotional too, don't they? Lady here. Oh, Mary, when you're at home tonight, who's done the cooking?
I can tell you exactly who's doing the cooking tonight. I had people on Monday, and I know it's Friday, and we had some coq au vin from some Dutch cousins. I very carefully took out 2 portions and put it in with lots of gravy, because I'm married to a gravy man, and I put that at the back of the fridge, and I shall do beans from the garden, which are getting a bit tough, and some nice little potatoes, and that'll be it, and some fresh fruit.
How assiduous are you?
Much more important, the glass of wine.
How assiduous are you about sell-by dates?
Sell-by dates?
Yeah.
Yes. We were all given a nose. And I was brought up that, if you'd bought a carton of double cream, say, and it says that you must use it by next Friday. Okay, if you pull the lid off and you dip your finger in it and you taste it, if it tastes all right, you use it. Having said that, I wouldn't give it to a pregnant lady or somebody very old and frail, but for my lot, they'll get it.
Tough as old boots, yes. Where do they get the contestants from?
Contestants for the Bake Off apply now for next year, and last year we had 12,000 applicants, and they're put through a very rigorous selection, and the last 150 bake in front of us.
So you have a hand in choosing them? You and Paul?
We used to have a hand very much in choosing them. There are now a wonderful team that choose them, and it's a surprise when we see the 12 at the end. But we used to be much more involved than we are now, but other people know exactly what to do and are even better trained at choosing than we are.
Are there more males to females in terms of applicants?
No idea, no idea. It is very fair, and I know that we get an awful lot of flack saying, we choose one from Scotland, one from different parts of the world, and all this sort of lark. Well, it's proved, hasn't it, in this last bake-off, that our winner was a lovely Muslim girl, and she won on her own right.
Great. Any more? Yes, sorry.
Equipment for Bake Off, do they have all the same equipment? Every cooking unit has a set amount of equipment. They can have whatever they want, and they can bring in any item of equipment. Ian brought in his own homemade everything, metal and whatever, his own
tins. It was like a garage from time to time, wasn't it?
I mean, why not? They can have whatever they like, and they can have whatever ingredients they want. And if they want us to get it, the home economics, the girls, we have 2 girls, they will research everything they can for them. But and I think that's the fairest thing to do.
When it's one of those sort of 3.5 hours, you have 3.5 hours, do you and Paul leave and sort of never come back until they're finished?
In the technical, we leave the moment they start, and then Paul goes off watching motor racing.
Or in his
on
Aston
the
Martin.
telly,
Yeah.
and I go off for a walk or something, but we're not there. We don't see them. We don't know anything about them till we walk in the tent. The others we're about, and we can watch at any time. But we don't give advice. Mel and Sue give advice, and they don't really know. But they're comforting, you see. They're lovely.
I saw her break that thing. Do you remember? She picked that and it broke. I mean, it's
Yeah.
down to...
Oh, well, never mind.
Yes, Lady there. Do you really choose the technical challenge?
We do, on the whole, choose it. They very often, my recipes, I don't know about Paul, some of his were not his, but he recommended them. On the whole, we're involved, yes, but sometimes they choose something and then I try it out and say, okay, we'll have that. But, we do try and choose something that people will enjoy at home.
Yes. Are the viewing public influenced, or what have they been influenced to buy by Mary? It's just saying that, remember the cranberry business with Delia Smith? Everybody went out and bought cranberries. Mary, has anything been a run on anything that you've recommended?
Oh, a tremendous run on all sorts of things. The supermarkets all have had an increase of something like 50% over the year of baking ingredients. Also tins, that we've used I personally only want to use non-fancy tins, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want ever for them to buy something that they only use once. But I was doing a Madeira cake and a lot of the soup this year, and I gather the supermarkets ran out of ground almonds because I put ground almonds in to make it keep. So it does have a bit of an effect. And the supermarkets think we should tell them ahead, and we don't.
I remember in the days of Percy Thrower, those of you might remember Percy Thrower was a great gardener who had a large garden centre, Percy Thrower's garden centre near Shrewsbury. And he used to do Gardener's World before I did it, and he said he was always very tempted to mention a line that wasn't shifting very well, because he knew that the following Friday he'd sell out. Now,
what a good idea.
I remember when I was doing Gardener's World, I remember once then going and doing a personal appearance in the garden centre, which I seldom do, certainly not at weekends, or rarely at weekends. And Gardener's World goes out on a Friday, and I remember doing a sort of question and answer session with people, and there was a big interwoven fence at the back, and I kept seeing magnolias walking past this interwoven fence. I thought, good Lord, there's a run on magnolias today. And I remember that the night before I'd been talking about magnolias, so I saw exactly what he meant. They walked out. Anybody at the back that I'm missing? Lady in the middle there. I'll come over there and say, yep. Your favourite cake, Mary, if you had to choose a favourite cake?
Well, of course I'd choose lemon drizzle. I would choose... My mother used to make a ginger a cake that had stem ginger icing on top, and I like that one. I love Madeira cake, and boringly I like Victoria sandwich. Yes, I think I like the things that I've been brought up on, really. Nothing... I like occasionally carrot cake, a little bit of everything.
So you know what to cook for her when she comes for tea. Right at the back, yes. Now that's a man. What happens to all that food after it's been baked?
Well, can you honestly think that we would chuck it in the bin? Well, we wouldn't. There is a very, very hungry crew who can't wait, and you know which are the best bakes with the one that rapidly go. The crew are starving afterwards. And also, the bakers themselves always take a bit home for their families, so nothing is wasted.
Somebody right at the back, yes. You were saying that you liked your granny's fish pie. Do your grandchildren have a favourite dish of yours that they like?
Yes, I think they've got lots of... they like... I know it's very boring to all of you, but I do a lasagna that they love, and I actually often do a mushroom lasagna with or roasted vegetable lasagna, because they like that just as much. And, of course... Out of all the things, it's Granny's roast. And I really cheat like mad and always do something like a slow roast shoulder, because my lot never arrive on time. And if it's in the oven another hour, does it matter? And it must have mint sauce. And it must have all the traditional things around it.
Time for a couple more. One there, yeah. I can't see your gender when I look out from here, because if I say madam and it's a gentleman, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, fine. Either that or a lady with a very deep voice. Sir.
To introduce some Arga cookery instructions into ordinary cookbooks. Sometimes it can be quite confusing as to where to place their...
I've been asked about Arga cooking in normal cookbooks. The percentage of people who've got Argas is exceedingly tiny. Because we're all here, I bet if I put your hands up, there would be 10 people or 12 people. You drive through Birmingham by Spaghetti Junction. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of cars, houses there. Nobody has an Arga. my publishers won't let me put AGA instructions in because the minority is so great.
So you need to buy the AGA cookbook, really. Yeah.
I do, in my cookery books, tell you what you can do ahead, what you can freeze, and those sort of things that everybody can do. But I can't really include AGA instructions. And once you've got an AGA, you soon learn how long it takes to make a casserole in it, and that you have to be careful on baking and do them in 2 tins rather than 1 deep tin because it'll burn. So people usually get the hang of it, and I'm sorry the publishers won't allow the space on every recipe because it would give fewer recipes in the book.
Yep, good point. Couple more. Yes, there. Oh, who are the youngsters who are going to be the Mary Berries of tomorrow? Well, next year.
There are lots of youngsters that are dying to be like me on television. And I always tell them that by all means start with teaching home economics or a teaching degree, because whatever I do on television or radio or we do, we are teaching. And it's a skill. And if they are going to be a chef or whatever, they've got to get on their CV, it's got to be better than anybody else's or catch the eye of the people who employ them. So they must get much experience as they can related to our subject. You know, I worked in a butcher's, I worked in a fishmonger's, I worked at London Airport for nothing, for BOAC doing canapes, and anything I could get on my CV, I did. And I think that's what we have to say to our young. In order to advance what they want to do, they've got to get out and get experience and persuade people that, yes, they can help. I was only hearing from Rick Stein. I know 2 people. One I heard about yesterday, and one of the girls who came to help me just wrote a nice letter to Rick Stein and said, I'll come in my holidays and work for you. I'll wash up, I'll do whatever. And I know of 2 people he accepted to do that.
And they're now married very happily. Sorry. One last question. There, lady in red. Lady, yes. Sorry, come a bit closer because I can't quite hear. Just come a bit down here. Do you want to be the next Mary Berry? Because we're looking for... Come here and you can ask yourself. It's all right. Hello, what's your name?
Charlotte.
Okay, Charlotte, you can ask your question now.
In the Great British Bake Off, what time does the baking start and what time does it finish?
What time of day? That's a good point.
What time does the bake-off start and finish? We usually get there about 7 in the morning, and remember in the summer it's not dark as it is now, and the bakers are all then divided up, and the cameraman plus a girl to interview, a researcher to interview them, how they feel on the morning, are they confident, whatever. I go to have my hair done and makeup, and I go through what I'm doing that day, and then we usually actually physically start filming at about 8:30 in the morning, and we finish about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. The final was 11 o'clock.
Long day. Charlotte, would you ever enter?
I would like to.
Do you bake at home? What are your specialities?
I like to make a chocolate and orange tart.
Can you give me your address? Thank you, Charlotte. Want a seat? Mary, you've shared an awful lot with us, for which thank you very much. I will finish just with one brief little story from my side, which is that I was told once, going through those ground force years and now Love Your Garden with these garden makeovers, that we get quite a lot of letters asking us to go. And I was told of a couple who woke up one Sunday morning. She woke up first, because she always did. And she saw the sun was shining through the curtains, and she dug him in the ribs, the Incredible Hulk lying next to her. And she said, love, she said, look, she said, the sun's shining, it's a beautiful day. This garden is in a terrible state. Would you mind doing something about it? And he said, what? She said, I don't want much. She said, just a bit of decking and some cobbles and a water feature and some bamboos. And he said, does it say Alan Titchmarsh up there? He said, I'm going to the pub. So off he went to the pub. The following weekend, another lovely day, same thing happened. She dug him in the ribs and she said, look, it's a lovely day. Never mind the decking and the water feature. Perhaps just a few plants in pots for a bit of colour out there would be really lovely. He said, I told you last week. Does it say Alan Titchmarsh up there? No, I'm going to the pub. Off he went. Third weekend, same thing happened. But when he came back from the pub on the third weekend, he walked right past his garden gate because he didn't recognise it. And then he went back and he checked the number, and it was his garden, and it was beautiful. And there was decking outside the back door and a water feature and cobbles and bamboos and blue fences. It was all done. And he walked up and he went into the kitchen and he said, what's been going on out there? And she said, oh, well, she said, you know the man opposite, the one who works on the oil rigs? So he said, yes. She said, well, he's back from the oil rigs, and we fell into talking over the garden fence, and he said, your garden's in a bit of a state, isn't it? She said, and I said to him, yes, but my husband likes to go to the pub on a Sunday rather than do the garden. So she said, but anyway, he said he'd do it for me, the oil rig man, and he's done it. So her husband said, well, what did he want for doing it? And she said, well, he said, we can either go to bed and make mad, passionate love, or you can bake me a cake. So her husband said, what sort of cake did you bake him? She said, does it say Mary Berry up there? Thank you, Mary.